And without further ado, help me with the last name. Again, I'm going to mess it up. How do we pronounce it officially?
Samuel Deuth.
Deuth. Okay,
is the last name.
I just, some people get really upset.
That's all good. I was on a Newsmax segment and they said, we want to hear from Pastor Sam Duluth. I was like, there's no L's. There's no L's in my last name.
Well, I was thinking Deuce. As
long as you don't call me Death. Pastor Death, it doesn't have the vibe.
I just wanted to make sure. So tell us about your church. I know you're the campus pastor at one of your churches. Where are you located? What's going on? All that stuff. Yeah, my
wife and I were campus pastors of Awaken Church, our Bresci Ranch, Camp Carlsbad location, kind of North County, San Diego.
Okay.
Jurgen and Leanne Matesius are our lead pastors of Awaken. And it's such a fun environment because it's like, Jurgen Matesius doesn't sound Australian, but he's a total Aussie surfer, but his family's from Germany, actually escaped from communism. His dad literally ran across a minefield to escape it. So with that foundation, our pastor, even though he's from Australia, became U.S. citizens. They're the most passionate, pro-American pastors, I think, maybe on the planet.
Isn't it funny how the people that weren't born in America are the most pro-American citizens that we have? That's one thing.
That appreciation is there that a lot of times Americans don't have.
The cons of privilege, right?
Yeah.
Like the people that were born here just don't understand at all. Okay, so I want to really go a different direction with you from a pastoral perspective. We homeschool our children. Me and my wife actually helped create and expand it's a homeschool hybrid. So it's a physical location, but it's teachers that have left the public school program that are teaching homeschool Christian-based curriculum in the school. So they get that social interaction, but at the same time, they get biblical, teaching, like the science books, the evolution stuff, all that mess and everything. Yeah. I come from a background, I was very hesitant for homeschool. So I came from a very...
with the stereotypes of homeschool, it's pretty easy to be hesitant, right? Everyone's nervous about it. You'll be making your own butter and sewing clothes.
And for me, I was actually taken out of my home when I was a child and things. And they homeschooled me, very religious background of God as this bully, right? And I talk about it all the time. I could never do anything right. Going to hell constantly, backsliding all the time. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so my wife came from homeschooling, and she loved it. And so we went back and forth for quite a while. And the thing that turned the tide for me, our kids were in public school till my daughter got in kindergarten. It's time for her to get in kindergarten. I'll never forget it. We were living in Texas at the time.
Yeah.
Could not believe it. We're enrolling her in school, and they slide us this piece of paper. And kindergarten. And they said, do you opt in or opt out of AIDS and HIV training for your kindergartner?
Wow.
And when I saw that, they put that form in front of me, and I looked at the person, and she looked at me, and she said, I know, but we have to do it. And I said, she's a kindergartner. Like, what possible reason could there be to teach them about that? And immediately that day, our kids never went back to school. Wow. And so I would love your opinion about school, and then I want to talk to you about college. But from a pastoral standpoint, what's going on in our schools, really? Because there's a lot of Southerners especially that believe that, that's not here yet, which is a lie.
Right.
And so from your perspective, what's going on in our schools?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was homeschooled growing up, and big family, so I had a pretty good experience of it. And I always like to kind of initially say around this topic is that all the stereotypes of maybe homeschooling being weird, it's a little different now, right? Because it's so much more like the thing to do. I would say my parents were homeschooling.
Tim Tebow changed a lot about homeschooling.
I would say, I was homeschooled before it was cool. I always say that sort of a deal. And but when it comes to homeschooling, are you doing it because you're afraid of the world?
Yeah.
And as a believer, we want to be wise. You don't have to be afraid.
Yeah.
So if as a parent you are afraid of the big, bad, evil devil world out there, then any form of education you do for your kid is going to be based out of fear, and nothing in fear works. Right? So you got to homeschool because you believe it's the right decision of what you want to invest and sow into your kid.
Right.
That's got to be the mindset. If you do that, then you're setting off on the right foot, and that's how my parents were. So it was there was nothing weird about it. There was no like scared living. It was actually more empowering and freedom. So I think when I was a kid, I still think it was valuable to homeschool us at the time. I think now is just so different.
Yeah.
The level of acceleration of what they're trying to shove through all of our school systems across our nation is at such a level to where it's switched from going like, hey, homeschool would probably be a good idea, to like, you need to have homeschool or you need to have solid biblical private education, because you are literally sending your kids to like being taught and indoctrinated by Satan, basically, right?
Exactly.
So, and I always say, like, to me, I don't necessarily feel like homeschool in and of itself is the total answer. My thing is, as a believer, biblical education, biblical worldview is the thing, right?
Yeah. And that's different from what a lot of people would call that biblical indoctrination, is what they would say. And I disagree. It just changes the lens of the compass that you view the world through. And that's what I think is so important, because we have schools now, public schools, that are teaching 10-year-olds sexual positions and things like that in school, which it's so crazy to me, because when I was in high school, junior year, I'll never forget, I'm 17 years old at this point, I got biology class where you learn, okay, this is how a sperm fertilizes an egg, and from that, a fetus is formed and a baby comes 9 months later. I got no problem with
basic biology.
When the time is right, basic biology, hey, this is actually how these things actually go down. I think there's a time and a place for that. But even at a high school level, teaching kids sexual positions and all this other kind of stuff, where in the world did that even come from?
Well, I think so much of that, it truly is, you remove the foundations and everything else begins to get chaotic, confused, and perverted, right?
Yeah.
So why is there so much confusion? Why is there gender confusion? Why is there just confusion on what's right and what's wrong in all kinds of range of things? Well, it's actually pretty simple. We removed the source of truth.
Absolutely.
We've removed the foundation layer that this nation and most of American civilization was formed on, built on. And so none of us should really be shocked. Even though it's frustrating or disappointing, it's not shocking.
Yeah.
When you start telling people they're an accident, they have nobody that they're accountable to as a creator, you start teaching all that dogma, then of course people are depressed, anxious, suicidal, confused about their gender, chasing off all these things that are trying to fill voids.
Yeah.
we have a foundational problem that we've rejected God in this nation. Now, thankfully, we're seeing people wake up, but it truly is, an environment where we've got to step up and engage.
Yeah, no, I agree, and we encourage our listeners all the time that if you have the time or the financial ability,
do it.
Get your kids out of the public school system. And I am always a more direct person, and I just tell them all the time, if you've got the resources, the time, and if you've got the money, why aren't you doing it?
Yeah.
Because at that point, you are willingly choosing to send your most precious commodities that you have as a human being into the fire.
Sorry, real quick. One of the things, the line that my mom would use all the time is go, hey, what God wouldn't send, didn't have the children of Israel sent to Babylon to be trained, right? Now, if they got captive and they were forced into that, that's a different scenario.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you have a choice,
correct,
to choose to send them to a biblical worldview environment versus a secular, godless worldview, it's going to create.
As a Christian, there's no decision.
There's no decision. This is easy. And we've got to take that seriously. If we care about our kids and the future foundation they're building on, we've got to get in tension with that. And I think, especially as conservative Christians, Of course, we love to talk about how there's all this victim mentality on the left. But I like to challenge this in the right a lot, because we like to say we're not a victim, but then all of a sudden we're starting to blame the teachers, and we're blaming the education curriculum. Take responsibility.
Do something about it.
Step up, own it, start educating your kids yourself, or create these other great homeschool, co-op environments. Our church started Awaken Academy, very similar to what you're talking about, kind of a homeschooling assisted environment. Stop blaming everybody else for everything being bad.
Do something.
They're your kids. I always say the same thing with the vaccine scenario, when that was like, man, I can't believe they're forcing my kids to get a vaccine. What are you talking about? You are the adult. You're the parent. If your kid got vaccinated or had to wear a mask for a year,
it's your fault.
That's your fault, parent. You can't blame anybody but yourself for that. We got to take that ownership.
I agree. All right, let's shift to college. And before I get your perspective on it, just full transparency, I'm a very anti-college guy.
Sure.
Almost like a Gary Vee approach. Unless you're going to have a scalpel in your hand, you're going to be defending criminals or building houses. I don't really know why you would go to college. He goes about it from a financial standpoint. I go about it from a financial and a spiritual standpoint. I am very pro gap 2 years. 18-year-olds, the vast majority have no clue what they want to do with their life, and then you send them to these indoctrinated prisons, and then they come out completely different people. That's my stance. I would love to hear your thoughts on what's going on in our colleges, all of the above.
I mean, I would say we probably have a pretty similar vibe on that. I mean, some people are like, man, we want the college experience. Well, what do you mean by the college experience?
Drinking, hey, that's what they mean. Yes.
Like, okay, and especially as a parent, we are paying money to send our college student to be absolutely distorted by that environment.
Correct.
So to me, you want to identify what you feel called to do first.
Correct.
Don't go and change your major 20 times.
Correct,
Right, wasting everybody's money, time, and being, caught up in the cesspool of that environment. I feel like if you can help your kid figure out what they feel called to do, then you can determine how much education they actually need to go and be successful at that.
Correct.
So that, to me, just getting an education because it's a good thing to do. The only where that could be good is if you're just going, man, my kid's lazy sitting on the couch. Well, they need to be getting active. You need to kick their butt out. They need to get a job, live on their own, allow the demands of life to force them into things.
Correct.
So there's all kinds of scenarios like that. But to just go is not a smart move, I think, for parents in general. I think you help them identify calling, purpose, destiny. Then that dictates what level of education they do or don't need to fulfill that career and be successful. Most jobs, like I posted something literally a few days ago before this event that we're recording at, and I literally said, parents, do everything you can to get your kids out of public school and liberal universities. And then someone said, well, how are they going to get a degree? I'm like, well, do they need it? That is a question, that is a legitimate question that we need to ask. We always want to be learning, growing, but I don't need to go to a 4-year plus college.
The most successful people I know personally, none of them went to college. A couple of them didn't even finish high school, and they're the most successful people that I know. And I believe that we have a culture, and this is just pure culture. We're not even talking about the spiritual battle we're fighting on college universities. We have a culture that's still living 30, 40 years ago, where if you didn't have that college degree paper, you were going to, work in a restaurant for the rest of your life, which that's not bad, but that was like the view, right? My grandfather, until he passed, still viewed if you wore jeans to work, it meant that you had a bad job.
Right.
Like just because, the cultures are still there. But now, I mean, we think it's bad in high school. What these people are being taught in, just the other day, there was a Senate hearing, and Josh Hawley was interviewing this professor. I can't remember what university it was. It was probably Berkeley or something. But either way, identifying, who is able to get pregnant. And she refused to answer and called it a transphobic question to even acknowledge who is able to become pregnant. I don't see how. There's
no value in sending our kids. I often say it like this: no career is worth sending my college-age student to one of the liberal universities.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not worth the possible impact.
Yeah.
Now, some kids go through that, they shake it off, they got a solid enough understanding of God's word, their identity, what they're called to do, and they're unfazed. Awesome. I'm not going to play Russian roulette with my young adult who's still forming how to process life.
Correct.
Right? Some kids are going to be at different stages of readiness for those environments. Obviously, actually, I think homeschooling actually creates a healthy enough identity and spiritual formation that a homeschool graduate from high school might actually do better in a college environment because they're so much more stabilized in who they are to be able to defend against the drama that might come their way. But I'm just not sure it's worth it.
Yeah.
Certainly the clout of saying you graduated from certain university should mean absolutely nothing to a Christian parent. The only question should be, can they be successful at the career that they feel called to do, and which environment they need to send? Most Christian universities have the ability to provide that. And now I say Christian university, that's its own layer.
Yeah.
Because I know a couple, it was really sad, sending some of our young adults to some Christian university. They came back practically an atheist and disbelieving the Bible's credibility. I'm like, where did they this kind of known Christian school? So you got to vet out the actual teachers and the theology of whether it's a Christian high school or whether it's a Christian, quote-unquote, college university. Know where your kids are going, what they're getting taught, what they're getting inputted. And I would agree with you that unless they absolutely need to, they got a scope on their hand. I have one of my brothers, went to Liberty University. He's a doctor. He's now in kind of his later stages of that. I need him getting the training. I need to know he knows what the heck he's about to do. But there is environments you can send it. It's not worth it to sacrifice your kid. Same thing I tell parents with sports, oh man, we're missing church all the time because my little Johnny's got all these tournaments. Cool, well, little Johnny no longer feels like church and God and Jesus are a priority because you ran him around to
his
sports
idol
tournament.
Sports now.
And now all of a sudden he's a young adult and you're wondering, wait, why doesn't he want to be a Christian? Why does he want to follow? Well, you showed him what mattered most.
I agree. So, resources. Are there any resources that you would recommend to parents listening right now? Either they've got normal school-age kids or they got a kid that's getting ready to graduate, go to college. Are there any resources that parents can go to?
Well, I really do think no matter what college or non-college environment, if you're preparing kids in this kind of current world, this is a little bit more of maybe the political side of it, but some of the wall builders guys, the Bartons are really great for resourcing, getting kids understanding things that are going on. Rick Green's kind of resources that kind of train, prepare kids kind of mentally for what they're facing. Otherwise, I think wherever you're at locally, you need to kind of look for, what homeschool co-ops are going on, what groups are resourcing. There's a lot of great organizations, I think, popping up across the entire nation, so I don't necessarily have one go-to spot. Obviously, I'm always shouting out different things. I know you are as well. So I think following some of us to help kind of process that and kind of get pointed. Obviously, DMing, if much as I can, I'll try to help find some local resource. But I think especially in this sort of post-COVID era where a lot of people pull out of public school and are forming co-ops and support groups. There's just absolutely tons of resources right now that you guys can grab onto. But some of it's geography, so I don't have one spot to send people.
No, absolutely. And last but not least, where can people go to see what you're doing, what your church is doing? Where can people go to support you?
My website is one spot, samueldeuth.com. But my social media, Instagram, Twitter, and all the Getter and Truth and anywhere where we're trying to get the word out and post about it, I'm there, just at Samuel Deuth. Pretty simple. That's a benefit having a Jewish and German first last name. Nobody else has my handle, so
there you go.
It's easy to dial.
I love it. I thought Graham Allen was unique until I started doing all this, realizing apparently there's a lot of us. Anyway, hey, this has been a great conversation. We've got to get you on for a much longer conversation at some point. Thank you so much for being here, man, and keep doing what you're doing.
Come on, same to you.
All right.